What's up, guys? Jeff Cavalier, ATHLEAN-X.com.
Jesse Lako, ATHLEAN-X.com.
So today let's talk about a very popular topic. People ask all the time about it, supplementation.
Yep.
And let's face it, there are a lot of supplements out there to take, lots of them. But it can be quite confusing, and it can be a little bit frustrating if you're wasting your money on the supplements you're taking.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes hear about like pissing away your supplements because you literally like, your body's not even using them and you just have expensive pee. So how could we eliminate that, and how can we actually get our money's worth? Well, I wanted to focus on what I believe are 3 supplements. I'm not saying that these are the only 3, but these are 3 that 100% actually work.
Yeah.
If you're gonna take them, you're gonna see benefits from them, and therefore they should be considered if you're willing to sort of go down that route of supplementation. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's start with a very obvious one. Jesse, you're gonna be like my in-the-field lab rat.
Because
right?
I've taken all these supplements.
Right, and as most people out there probably have too, but let's talk about them. First of all, protein powder.
Yep.
Right? Now, I have gone on record as saying I don't even view protein powder as a supplement anymore. It is an alternative method for ingesting protein that a lot of times comes in a more cost-effective way, especially thanks to inflation. You know, we have a lot more expensive chicken, beef, eggs, milk, all those things. Well, we can get protein powder, and I believe in a more cost-effective way.
Yeah, it definitely saves my grocery bill.
And because I ingest it every single day, and it has a macronutrient profile to it, it's a food, I'm able to look at it in a non-supplementary way. Whereas the fish that you have once every 2 weeks, when you go out for your brunch, without maybe on a Sunday every once a month, that's probably more supplementary to what you're taking than the protein powder you take every single day. But let's talk about protein powder. So it comes in many different forms, right? There's 2 fractions of milk, which is basically your casein or your whey.
Okay.
Mostly I like to focus on the whey protein side of it because I feel like that's probably the one that's least likely to cause any type of allergies or adverse reactions for people.
I feel like it's also the most popular version of the supplement.
100%, right. And then there's 3 different types of it. So it's based on how filtered that protein is when it gets to you. So there's concentrate, which has more of the milk sugars in it, which could cause some lactose issues. Mm-hmm. Then it has isolate protein, which is what majority of people take. And then there's hydrolysate proteins, which is even a higher purity level, much more expensive, but it's still all protein. At the end of the day, your body's going to process it the same exact way. No pun intended. Now, in terms of how often you take it, so again, I take it every single day. You had an interesting reason why you actually started taking it, right?
Well, for me, I have, as I've documented well on this channel, had trouble eating a lot of food. I don't know if I had
big portions.
Yeah, I don't know if I had a small stomach or I just
match the size of your pecs.
Yeah. But I started taking protein under your recommendation, taking protein drinks twice a day, once in the morning and then once after training. And it was a great way to get calories in because I wasn't getting it from food eating as big meals as I probably should have been.
So most importantly, you're getting your protein needs met throughout the day.
Oh, absolutely. Because
when it comes to that, there's all numbers that are thrown around all the time, 0.7 grams to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, right? Some even say even a little bit less than that. But when it comes to actually building muscle, I usually use the bottom line recommendation of at least 1 gram per pound of body weight, and sometimes up to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, right? So you're gonna need, if you're a 160-pound person, you're gonna need 160 grams of protein up to 200 grams of protein or so. So it's not as easy as you think it is to get it, especially in financially challenged times where all these products I talked about before, like meat and chicken and fish and all those things have kind of skyrocketed. So meeting your protein needs is really important. The other thing though you mentioned was just overall calories, which is something that he struggled with for a long time. Any hard gainer out there, you likely have to first look at your calorie intake because that could be where you're struggling. Protein shakes are so easy to augment in terms of calories.
Oh, hell yeah. I used to throw peanut butter. I mean, I still do throw peanut butter and bananas in my shakes. Right, some honey sometimes. Calorically
just boosting that up. And because you can drink those calories, for people like Jesse who have smaller appetites, it's much easier to get them in. Yeah. Now, interestingly, when it comes down to how much protein, it's also a question of how much should I have per serving. And leucine happens to be the most anabolic constituent of the amino acids that contribute to muscle growth. There are some research studies out there that show that a minimum of 29 grams of protein is necessary to reach that threshold, the anabolic threshold, whereas that leucine can stimulate muscle protein synthesis through this mTOR pathway. You can kind of play around with that because remember, if you're mixing it with milk, you can get some protein through that too. So the protein doesn't all have to come from the powder. But in our protein, I actually put just 30 grams of protein in it straight out. So even if you decide to mix it with water, you don't have to worry about that. So just another thing to consider. But as far as how often throughout the day, again, you had 2 protein shakes.
Yeah.
I have 1 a day. And as far as timing of it, I don't see the necessity anymore of having to like rush home after a workout to go have my protein shake. That's
anabolic window.
Yeah, the anabolic window has closed pretty dramatically. But as long as you're taking a protein shake often enough to meet your protein requirements for the day, that I think is what's most important.
Consistency.
So, consistency. All right, next supplement up would be creatine.
Creatine.
And probably the most researched supplement out there, especially from a safety and efficacy standpoint, because a lot of young kids were taking creatine when it first came out because it was one of those first supplements that actually did something, that actually provided what it said it would, right? I remember the very first time I took it, I was reading an old magazine called Muscle Media 2000. If you guys remember that, chime in down below. But they had a supplement called phosphagen. And it turns out, now that I know better, like phosphagen was just creatine monohydrate that supposedly had a proprietary way of harvesting the creatine to make it more absorbable and pure. And, I mean, that's now kind of going by the wayside as well,
Sounds
too.
scientific.
It sounded scientific, but it was just creatine monohydrate that I paid, I think, $65 for like 500 grams or less. It's come down a lot in price. But we were taking it as teenagers, and I think a lot of people were, because again of the efficacy of it, were wanting to study how safe it really was. It's probably one of the safest things you can put in your body. Now actually being better for cognitive health long term for everybody, even those that are not in the lifting community.
Really?
So there's some big benefits that are potentially not even restricted to just meatheads, right? Like myself or others. That being said, how do you use it? How do you dose it? What do you do with all the different forms of it, right? I think there's some discussion there. So the first thing is, you either can take a loading phase or not, which means you're just going to be taking an additional amount of creatine throughout the day, so 4 or 5 times a day, up to 20 grams, to load up your body's stores of creatine. Because once you hit the maximum levels, there is no additional benefit. You reach your body's maximum capacity for it. There's no need to take any more than that. So you can do that in around 5 days, depending upon your body. But once you go past that, there'd be no need to take any more than just 5 grams per day for maintenance. That said, there's 3 different mechanisms how creatine works. Number 1, it's a precursor to ATP, which is the main energy and driver of muscular contraction. So when you're in the gym, your ability to work harder is going to be easier if you're on creatine. The second thing is you get a bit of a superhydration effect. When the cell takes creatine in, it also brings water with it. And by doing so, you get a little bit more of that cell swelling. You have more of a resting pump, right? Mm-hmm. Even just walking around, you'll look a little bigger, you'll feel a little bigger. And that's kind of cool because it gives you that instant feedback that makes you think, like, this is working and I want to continue to use it.
Oh, I look good.
And then finally, also by having a more hydrated muscle cell, we know that's a good benefit for long-term increases in muscle protein synthesis, so more muscle growth over time because you have better cell hydration. So you had a problem though, right?
Yes. Wasn't just during the loading phase, it was during the maintenance phase as well when I was taking creatine monohydrate. I had gut issues. My bloat, just stomach discomfort, and running to the bathroom every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I made a switch on your recommendation, which was to HCl.
Just to talk about different forms of creatine. So you have monohydrate, which is by far the most popular, and then you have creatine hydrochloride, and there's a whole bunch of others too. Creatine hydrochloride I find is the most universal in that the 10 to 15% of the people that have gut issues from monohydrate won't have those issues generally when they take the hydrochloride version of it. It's just based on absorbability and the byproducts of the breakdown of monohydrate versus hydrochloride. That tends to cause some gut distension and bloat. If that's you, you're not going to have those issues likely with hydrochloride. The downside to hydrochloride is that it tastes like shit. It's it's so sour. If you were to take it like you would monohydrate, you can throw monohydrate into anything. You can throw it into a shake, or you can even throw it into water, anything. It doesn't have a taste. But if you put hydrochloride in it, it's going to taste horrible.
Yep.
So usually it gets masked in other citrusy type things. So in our case, we have our pre-workout. We have creatine hydrochloride in that, and you don't really taste it because it's already got that really citrusy taste.
Yeah.
The upside of hydrochloride is that you could also take a lower dose to reach the same benefits. So 5 grams for monohydrate, about 2 to 3 grams would do the same thing with hydrochloride. I will say this though, and I've said it so many times before, all of the research benefits, all the proven benefits, all the safety profile is all the same regardless of the form of creatine that you take. If you're not having a problem with it, monohydrates it's going to be a little bit less expensive, and it provides exactly the same benefits. So the mechanism of what it does for you is unchanged. It's just how your body handles it that may determine which form of it you might want to take.
Right.
And these days, it's rather inexpensive. It's come down a lot in price. There was a point in time during the pandemic when it was skyrocketing, like everything else was, but now it seems to have come back down to earth, and we actually have a creatine monohydrate, very inexpensive at ATHLEAN-X.com too. Thirdly, this is something that not as many people, I think, take advantage of, but should. Yep. And this is omega-3 fatty acids, so omega-3 supplementation. Now, my experience with omega-3s goes way back to the point where I have to go on record and say this is probably the first supplement that I ever took. And it's because my father, who is an internal medicine physician now for 40 some odd years, 50 years probably now, 50 years, he's a huge believer in the benefits, the overall health benefits of omega-3 fatty acids. They have shown some very, very recently too, very, very positive anti-catabolic, pro-recovery, almost anabolic effects if taken in high enough amounts. And they also have cognitive benefits. They've been shown to have heart protective benefits. There's been some research out there, and some people might point to it every now and then, about the cardiac risks of taking omega-3s. When you go back and you actually look at any knowledgeable scientists have gone back and looked at those and debunked pretty much the construct of those studies. They were so flawed. They didn't control for a dose. They didn't control for source. They didn't control for anything. And there was also the patient population that was taking it was very flawed in terms of skewing the results. They were people that were already in the hospital for other cardiac issues. So not very effective in terms of gauging the benefits and the safety of omega-3s.
Sounds dubious.
Very dubious. But I can tell you that they are incredibly, incredibly effective and incredibly beneficial and something that all people should consider well beyond the lifting community. But let's talk a little bit about that. Do you take omega-3s?
I do now. I actually started taking them.
As of like today? Because you just heard me say that?
No, I've been taking them for the last, I want to say, 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. It actually started with a recommendation from my neurologist saying it would help cognitive function with all the brain injuries I've had and concussions and all that jazz. Yeah. But I also noticed I was recovering in my workouts faster. And I don't know if that's just because I was taking my training more seriously at that time, or that's when I really started to take it seriously. But I was recovering faster, and I was, just feeling better. And I also noticed a little bit more gains. Again, I can't tell you if it's exactly
well, it's not.
that.
I don't think it's a surprise. No, I don't think it's a surprise. I don't think it's a coincidence either. I think that the quality matters. Okay, so there's two different forms of omega-3s. They come in either an ethyl ester form or they come in a triglyceride form. So triglyceride is the more natural existence of the omega-3 fatty acids. The ethyl ester is kind of a manufactured method of putting them together. And the only risk to that is that the ethyl esters tend to become more rancid more quickly. And the only big negative, I would say, from omega-3 supplementation is if you're taking a poor quality omega-3 and it is largely rancid, you actually could get some detrimental effects from taking them, I would think.
Really?
Yeah, the quality needs to be high in order to experience the maximum benefit with very little risk at all. And again, any negative study that's ever been done, it would be very important to control for that element of what the quality of the fish oil was that they were taking. Now, someone that I have a high respect for, Dr. Chris McGlory, he's done a lot of work in terms of the benefits of omega-3, specifically for people that like to lift, and their ability to create some of those anabolic effects that you saw, and at the very least, the anti-catabolic benefits. And you want to focus on the two components that are in the fish oil, EPA and DHA. And those are the two essential fatty acids that are in the omega-3. Generally, you're looking for a 3-to-2 ratio of EPA to DHA, okay? And secondly, it's not necessarily the pill size, but specifically the total amount when you add up the EPA and DHA. That's the gram total that you're looking for, all right? So somewhere between 1 and 2 grams is a really effective level to be at. And again, if you're looking at some of those additional benefits, anabolic type benefits that are emerging right now, you'd go a little higher towards that 4 gram mark. Consistency is really the most important thing here. You can certainly get omega-3 fatty acids from your own nutrition, but to get them in the levels that I think are adequate to see this level of muscle protection is oftentimes going to only come in the form of supplementation. Again, because eating fish regularly Sometimes introduces other side effects like the mercury content in the fish that winds up causing a host of other issues when you're eating fish every single day.
Eating too much sushi.
My wife was actually recently eating a lot of sushi, and she had her blood levels tested, and her mercury was high.
Really?
Like 7 times higher than what it should have been.
Makes sense, because someone I went to college with ate sushi literally every day for an entire semester, and he ended up with mercury poisoning.
Thankfully, she didn't get that high, but meanwhile, with just about 3 weeks or so of not eating sushi again, that came down, she had it retested. So I think even when you're talking about cost effectiveness, those are three pretty very cost-effective type supplements that definitely deliver a bang for their buck. Like if you're going to look to take your training to the next level and your results to the next level, those would be my choices, and then implementing all 3 of them would certainly provide a reliable boost, I think, not just to your recovery, but also your results. We actually have them all available over at ATHLEAN-X.com. That's not a plug. That's just simply because I believe in high-quality supplementation and stuff that actually works. We have them all available at ATHLEAN-X.com. In the meantime, leave your stories below. What's your experience with the supplements you take? If you could only take 3, what 3 would you take? I'd be interested to see and also to hear some of your stories, just like my phosphagen story. I want my money back on that. It's a lot of money I spent. All right, guys, we'll be back here again soon with another video. Make sure you click subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss a video when we put one out. All right, guys, see you soon.